100% know what happened, but per their culture, usually the crosses would be placed at the bottom of the hill. That would allow people at the top of the hill to spit on them, to throw stones, to call cursings on them, and then a lot of times the skulls would actually be buried at the bottom of the hill. If you were crucified there, you were probably an awful sinner, and no one was going to bury you otherwise. So, right next to it, this is where Golgotha is. The Garden of Gethsemane is, I'm sorry, not the Garden of Gethsemane, the Garden Tomb is very, very close. It's within the same area. This is owned by Christians. It's called the Garden Tomb. There are a couple places where people believe that Christ may have been buried. We're not saying that this 100% is the place, but I did go here, and I also went to the place where the Catholics believe that he was buried, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. But this is very interesting. I show you the diagram of the tomb, and I have a example out front, one that I got from Jerusalem. This is very interesting. I'm going to try this pointer again, see if I can get it to work. It's very small, but if you think about hewing this out of rock, it would be very difficult. This is the main entrance here. You walk in, and this here is the weeping chamber. Here, the family would weep. The spices would be put around the body. And then in here, most likely right here, is where the body would have been laid. Now, interestingly enough, if you read in the scriptures, and this is part of the reasons why they're saying this may be the tomb, for one, it's so close to Golgotha. Number two, it is in a vineyard. This actually used to be a vineyard. There is a wine press here and vineyards would only be owned by very, very rich people. This tomb, there were no bone boxes found in that area. And so there's no proof that it was ever used. So it looks like it was a brand new tomb. And then if you read in the scriptures, this is very interesting. One of the details says when the disciples went in, the first people who found that Christ had risen, it says they look in and they look to the right and they see the cloth that was there. If you physically stand, now all of this wouldn't have been here. This wall has been built. This area here has been brought down a little bit lower. This would have been, right here would have been more ground level. Okay? They had to stoop down, look into the tomb. When they look in, it says they looked in right here, and to the right, they saw the cloth. And there you can see how you would easily be able to see the cloth from that area. So is this a tomb? We don't know. But it was very neat to be there and to see this place and to think that, wow, this may be where the Lord lay. Of course, the neat thing is on the sign on the door, right as you're leaving the grave, it says, he is not here, for he's risen as he said. And that's very exciting to read. Whether or not it's the place, when you're there, you just think, wow, this is awesome. Okay, diagram of the tomb. Okay, the next part I want to show you, Pilate's Judgment Hall. This is from the slideshow. This ceiling would not have been there. This would have been completely an open area. This is what I want to point your attention to here. This stone, which you can't see very clearly, so I'm going to blow it up and do it darker on the next slide. This is something called the Game of the King. The Game of the King was played by the soldiers, okay? And they would take actually sheep's knuckles and use them as dice to roll around. And originally, a lot of the soldiers used to play this game among themselves. They, were just passing the time, and so they would use this dice, and they would, okay, one of them, okay, you're going to be the king for the day. They would usually do this to the new recruits. And they would give that new recruit, it was like their initiation. They give them a robe, they give them a crown, a scepter, they pay homage to him. And then during the course of the day, the other soldiers would go ahead and they would gamble for all of their possessions. Okay, it would be their clothes, their wife, their home back in Rome, whatever it was. And ultimately, that gambling would result in, okay, now who gets to kill you? And the king at that time was not very happy about a lot of the soldiers playing this game, felt it was bad for morale, so then this moved into doing this for the prisoners. So we'll pick the prisoners we're going to make fun of today. There are different parts of this, which I don't remember all of them, but this is supposed to be like the house for, okay, well, here's your house, we're going to take your house, and now we're going to give you a lifeline to get out, but oh, here's the snake, now he's with it, and we're going to pull you back in, and now we're going to kill you, and after we make you feel floor in Pilate's judgment hall, the area where Jesus was tried. And when you think about that, you think about, wow, that's what they did to Christ. The game of the king. This is the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is part of the Old City of Jerusalem. The Old City has 4 quarters. It has the Muslim quarter, the Armenian quarter, the Christian quarter, and the Jewish quarter. What are all these quarters? They are designated areas for these different groups of people. You are allowed to mill about within the different areas. You don't have to be, Jewish to enter the Jewish quarter. However, you can sense a great difference when you go from one to another. When I was in the Jewish quarter, I felt very, very safe, very calm, relaxed. People would say, "Shalom, you're very welcome." And, the Christian quarter was a little bit more reserved. But when I went into the Muslim quarter, I took my backpack and literally put it in front of me and held it to me. You just feel a little bit more unsafe and uncertain. So there is a difference between the different quarters in the Old City. Temple Mount is on top of the Old City. This is believed to be the same site as Mount Moriah, and this is one of the things that was very interesting to me. There's a lot of speculation on this. However, after hearing the teaching there and studying it a bit more myself, it is possible that this was the original Garden of Eden. The Gihon River still runs beneath it. And if you think about that, you think about, okay, so if this did used to be the Garden of Eden, this is where man fell. It's also the same as Mount Moriah. We know that. Mount Moriah, of course, is where Isaac would have been put up to die, and that was going to be a symbol of Christ's death. So both of these things happening in the same place. And then, right outside, right on the edge of this, outside Jerusalem, is Golgotha. And so then you have Christ dies on the cross there, and right behind that is the Mount of Olives, where Christ returns. So you see the past and the future all together in this one place. And it's very rich when you're there to see that and to get perspective into that. That's my little promo, but that was before Pastor Parks put in the brochure in the bulletin today. I am going to go back to that slide for just a minute. This trip was phenomenal for me. It was a trip of personal enrichment. It has been said by Pastor Lance, and I would agree with him, that after you visit Israel, as you read the scripture, instead of reading in black and white, it's like reading in living color. And it's very true once you've been to Israel and you see and you remember and you can see the different places. This was very important for personal enrichment, but it was also a witnessing opportunity for me. As most of you know, I work in the hospital as a nurse, and on my floor, I was so excited about going to Israel, I was telling everybody about it. And all the nurses knew, and all the physicians knew. And I set up a blog, which quite a few of you here in the church were on while I was there, and I appreciate very much your prayers for me and your asking about how the trip went. I do have a copy of my blog out there. If any of you are interested in reading parts of it, I can give you the link, but it's long, so you might just want to look at pictures. But a lot of the nurses and physicians actually followed on my blog while I was there, and I was able to share the gospel through that, and it was very interesting. I was quite surprised when I came back from Israel how many people had shown interest in wanting to go, and I actually have one physician, one cardiologist who is very desperately wanting to go, wants to go on the next trip. I have a nurse who's interested in going, and I have another doctor whose wife is interested in going. That being said, Israel is a wonderful trip for the believer. It's wonderful for personal enrichment. It'll greatly enhance your understanding of the scriptures. But it's also a wonderful tool to be able to bring, if you have somebody who's unsaved, to bring them along, and then they can hear the truth of the gospel. And I would recommend, if you are going to go on a trip to Israel, don't just go with anybody. Different groups do different things. Some people just sing at every site they go to. Some people do a lot of teaching. Some people go for maybe 2-3 hours at a time and let you sightsee on your own. I know for me, I wouldn't have known anything if I went going on my own. So So it was very rigorous, the trip that we went on. There was a lot of teaching. You learned a lot. But just think about that. Talk with Pastor Parks about the trip that he has available. I do want to, I was going back and forth, am I going to sing them a song or not? And I think I do want to sing you a song, only because it was my favorite. And I was singing it probably every day from when I came back from Israel for probably 2 months. And now we're about 5 months out, and I still find myself singing it sometimes when I walk the dog. So the translation is to this song is, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for to the end of the earth is his mercy," or "for his mercy endureth forever. Give thanks to the Lord, give thanks." And while we were there, an Israeli guide taught us many songs, many Bible verses in Hebrew. And I do have the words, but I do just want to end